No one expected what was about to happen when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett leaned into the mic and cracked a joke at Kash Patel's expense. But they had no idea what was coming next. Right before we jump into this wild story, tell us, where are you watching from? You might be surprised how far this reaches. The chamber was packed, the air tight with anticipation. It was day 3 of a nationally televised oversight hearing on intelligence leaks. Rows of reporters lined the back wall, their phones out, live streams rolling. Influencers were live tweeting every second. Every seat was filled, including a quiet corner where a stoic older man sat still, Jasmine Crockett's father, flown in quietly, without mention. At the center of it all sat 2 figures, each a lightning rod in their own right. Jasmine Crockett, sharp-tongued, unrelenting, and a rising star among progressive voices. Known for her fierce rebuttals and social media dominance, she carried herself like a courtroom veteran. But underneath the confidence, this hearing was personal. Her reputation was under scrutiny for allegedly dismissing classified material. Breaches. Kash Patel, former Trump administration official turned whistleblower, came armed with documents, receipts, and an unsettling calm. He had a military mind and a prosecutor's precision. And today, he was here to expose what he claimed were dangerous double standards in Congress, with Jasmine Crockett squarely in his sights. The stakes? Trust in America's national security process, and the career reputation of one of the most talked-about voices in Congress. And just as Crockett leaned back with a smirk, cracking, "Maybe Mr. Patel can find those classified files with his secret decoder ring," the audience laughed. But only for a second, because the moment Kash Patel opened his mouth, the entire room shifted. Kash Patel leaned forward slowly, adjusting the mic like a surgeon preparing for incision. "Well, Congresswoman Crockett," he said with the kind of deliberate calm that makes a room go still, "it's refreshing to see national security being treated like an open mic night." The smirks vanished. Laughter died abruptly. The committee room, moments ago alive with chatter, now throbbed with tension. Jasmine narrowed her eyes, but said nothing. Patel continued, "Since you brought up decoder rings, let me decode something. For you. In December, 5 classified documents were removed from a secure intelligence server under your subcommittee's jurisdiction. Instead of raising alarms, your office issued a memo, suggesting the breach was procedural." He held up the document. Cameras zoomed in. The paper bore Crockett's signature. A ripple of whispers spread like wildfire through the audience. "Now," Patel said, flipping a tab, "when this same mistake happened in 2019 under a Republican-led committee, you called for criminal indictments. So my question is simple. Was that breach a matter of law or just politics?" Crockett blinked, her hand resting calmly on the desk. Patel didn't wait for a reply. "I mean, I get it." He shrugged, the sarcasm now thick. "You're busy going viral on TikTok, delivering monologues that belong more in a Netflix drama than on a congressional dais. But some of us still believe the truth matters, even when it's inconvenient." The room tensed. A few staffers coughed awkwardly. Cameras captured the flickering discomfort on Crockett's face. On X, formerly Twitter, Crockett vs. Patel started trending within minutes. One meme flashed across screens. Patel in sunglasses, Crockett cartoonishly holding a decoder ring. It was going viral. But then, Jasmine Crockett leaned in. No panic, no shouting, just a quiet confidence that changed the temperature in the room. "Mr. Patel," she began, voice cool, clear, and unshaken. "Let me decode you for a moment." The audience murmured, an audible lean-in. "You're here because you want to cast doubt, not just on me, but on the entire process of congressional oversight. You wave documents like they're grenades, hoping we won't check the fuse. So let's talk about that memo." She tapped her pen against the printed report in front of her. "This document, which you just quoted, was a preliminary review, not a final statement. We referred the case to the DOJ, and that same week, your office released a podcast calling me an unfit disgrace." Gasps from the back of the room. "And just so we're clear," she continued, flipping a page, "I've been in courtrooms long before this building. You want to paint me as reckless, but I've prosecuted more real cases than you've written blog posts about. You may have worked under Trump, but I've worked under pressure, The first clap came from the public gallery. Soft, singular, but soon joined by others. Kash Patel's jaw tensed. He tried to interject, but Crockett held up a finger. "I didn't interrupt you, sir," she said firmly. "You quoted me out of context. You tried to drag my reputation through the mud while my father, who served 2 tours overseas, is sitting right there in the back, watching. So let me ask you, Mr. Patel, when did protecting your talking points become more important than protecting the truth?" The camera panned to her father, who sat still. A proud, unreadable expression on his face. Kash didn't speak. The room buzzed with murmurs. Even committee members from across the aisle exchanged glances. Staffers tapped away at phones. MSNBC cut in with a live analysis. That moment may have just shifted the entire tone of today's hearing, but that was just the beginning. What happened next changed everything. Kash Patel sat frozen for a beat, his smirk having vanished like fog in daylight. Jasmine Crockett's words hung in the air like a courtroom verdict. He leaned back, gave a forced chuckle, then sat forward again, his tone sharpening like a blade. "Oh, Congresswoman, you're clever. I'll give you that. Got your applause line. Got your Twitter clip. But let's not pretend a courtroom resume gives you the moral high ground here." He paused, then twisted the knife. "Your father's military. Service is commendable, truly. But let's not use him as a human shield when the questions get uncomfortable." Gasps, audible, immediate. Crockett blinked, just once, but didn't flinch. Kash sensed the reaction but pressed harder, knowing he had to regain ground. "I'm sure your father's proud. But this isn't about him. This is about your record, your voting history. The fact that when the Intelligence Subcommittee flagged a Chinese cyber intrusion in January, you dismissed it as, what was it again? Another GOP distraction?" He turned to the audience, eyebrows raised. "And now here you are, talking about national security like it's your expertise." He flipped to a new document, this time screenshots of Crockett's old social media posts. Tweets from years ago, some half-joking, others out of context. "Here's you," Patel said, reading aloud. "I'd rather binge-watch Scandal than listen to these intelligence briefings. Real talk." The laughter was nervous. Some in the room found it funny. Others looked away in discomfort. Patel pressed on, almost smug now. "You want to be taken seriously, Congresswoman, but when you tweet like an influencer and skip classified briefings, what exactly should we take seriously?" He turned the screen to show the tweet on a projector behind him. This was his moment, or so he thought. Jasmine stayed still, silent, measuring. Then she reached for the mic. Her tone, icy calm. "Mr. Patel, I find it fascinating, if not deeply ironic, that a man who peddled conspiracy theories on late-night cable is suddenly concerned with decorum." Laughter now shifted, not at her, but at him. She gestured to the projector behind her. "That tweet? Dated March 17th, 2019. I was a civil rights attorney in Texas. I hadn't even run for office. That was a joke during a TV recap thread, something your staff clearly knows but chose to ignore. Which begs the question, if your argument relies on misquoting someone's pre-political tweets, maybe you're not arguing in good faith at all." She paused. "And as for skipping briefings, I've attended every secure intel session this year. In fact, the one you're referring to, I stayed after hours to ask follow-ups, because your replacement from the previous administration couldn't answer basic questions about SIGINT protocols." A stunned silence. Even Patel looked caught off guard. But Jasmine wasn't done. "You came here hoping to embarrass me," she said. "You came with props, tweets, and buzzwords. But I came with something you don't have. The record. I've legislated, litigated, and led." Then she turned slowly toward the crowd behind her. "And if any of you want to fact-check me, I invite you to. It's all public. Unlike the sealed indictments you tried to interfere with before leaving your post in the DOJ under questionable circumstances." That landed like a thunderclap. Cameras whipped to Patel. Reporters in the press gallery began typing furiously. One mouthed, "Did she just bring up the DOJ probe?" Audience whispers grew louder. Even members on the committee leaned back in their chairs, clearly unsure of what would come next. Patel shifted in his seat. He opened his mouth, but paused, swallowed hard. Crockett looked him square in the eye. And if you're done digging up decade-old tweets, maybe we can return to why this hearing exists in the first place. Because American intelligence was compromised, and instead of uniting to find solutions, you're out here playing courtroom theater. She sat back slowly, letting the words hang. Then, all at once, the room shifted. Subtly, but unmistakably. A Capitol staffer near the back was seen nodding. A congressional aide whispered into their boss's ear. Even C-SPAN's live chat was lighting up with comments like, "Crockett just cooked Patel alive." She didn't raise her voice once, and still obliterated him. Where's the lie, though? The gallery was tense. But now, it was Kash Patel who seemed like the outsider, the instigator, the one who went too far. But the next move from Kash Patel would be their biggest mistake yet. Kash Patel, now visibly rattled but unwilling to back down, leaned forward once more. But this time, he wasn't playing for applause. He was playing for survival. He narrowed his eyes at Jasmine Crockett, then pulled out a sealed manila envelope from beneath his notes. His tone regained its sharp edge. "All right, Congresswoman. Let's see if you're ready for the real game." He slid the envelope toward the committee clerk and nodded. The clerk opened it carefully, revealing a freshly printed intelligence report. Top secret, redacted sections heavily marked in black. "This," Patel said, turning toward the audience and the cameras, "is a declassified summary from the NSA's recent internal audit, only partially available to members of this committee. And within it is a technical breakdown of a foreign disinformation campaign targeting minority communities in the U.S. via AI-generated deepfakes." He turned back to Crockett, the faintest smirk returning to his lips. "You're so proud of your legal credentials, your community work, your national security chops. Then tell us, without the help of your aides or a break to research, based on this report," he pointed to a specific paragraph highlighted in yellow, "can you explain, right here and now, the sequence-level anomaly flagged in the cipher protocol string that identifies manipulated video hashes within blockchain-verified timestamps?" The room fell dead silent. Even committee members shifted uncomfortably. This was Patel's trap. A hyper-specific, cutting-edge question from the old cybersecurity domain, one that even most intel veterans might not grasp. He was betting the house that Crockett, a civil rights attorney by training, would freeze, fumble, or worse, give a wrong answer. He folded his arms and waited. Jasmine took a moment. She adjusted her mic, then she began. Not with panic, but with clarity. "Well," she said softly, "before I answer, let's make one thing clear." She turned to the clerk. "Can we verify that this report, while declassified in parts, was not submitted to all committee members in advance?" The clerk looked to the chair, then nodded. "That is correct. This packet was not distributed prior to the session." Jasmine turned back to Patel. "So, you just introduced a technical trap, with no preparation, hoping I'd stumble. I appreciate the creativity, but let me play your game." She gently took the report, scanned the paragraph in question, then glanced at the footnotes. Her eyes sparkled. "You know, Mr. Patel, it's funny. You're asking about a sequence anomaly in the cipher string, but the footnote you've highlighted references version 3.1.7 of the blockchain verifier. That update was deprecated last month due to false positives caused by AI inference noise. Something that's noted right here in Appendix C of the same report." She flipped to the last page, exposing Patel's own oversight. "In other words," she said, turning to the audience, "he just built a whole argument on a string no longer in use." Which any up-to-date analyst would know. A loud gasp. Patel's lips parted slightly. He blinked, visibly caught off guard. Jasmine continued, her voice gaining strength. "The anomaly he's referencing was discovered during a MITRE audit of outdated protocol logs. Not current NSA-recognized authentication methods. So, unless Mr. Patel wants to explain why he's still working off obsolete data, I'd suggest we move the conversation forward." The room exploded in murmurs. A reporter from the Hill whispered, "She just reversed engineered a classified challenge live." Even a seasoned member of the committee, Senator Carlisle, leaned into the mic with a chuckle. "Well, I'll be. That might be the cleanest takedown I've seen in this chamber all year." Patel stared down at his notes. His entire trap laid bare. But Jasmine wasn't done. She gently slid the report back across the table. And while we're discussing disinformation, let me add something. She turned again to the cameras. The reason minority communities are being targeted isn't because we don't understand technology. It's because people like you weaponize confusion to make us doubt our voices. You come in here with your Silicon Valley smugness and try to paint us as out of our depth. But you forgot something critical. She leaned in, calm and razor-sharp. Where I'm from, we learn fast. We lead. And we don't back down just because someone thinks throwing tech jargon will shut us up. The crowd erupted. Not just polite applause, but the kind of stunned, emotional reaction that spilled over the line of professionalism. Even the chair had to slam the gavel twice for order. C-SPAN's chat was on fire. She didn't just survive the trap, she blew it up. Patel got reversed Uno'd with his own footnote. That's the kind of intelligence and courage we need. Patel sat back, his expression unreadable, but clearly aware he had miscalculated. And then, just when everyone thought it was over, Jasmine Crockett dropped a final bombshell. Kash Patel adjusted his collar, a tight flick of his hand betraying the internal panic beginning to spread. The gleam of confidence that once danced in his eyes was gone, replaced by darting glances and quick, shallow breaths. He shuffled his papers unnecessarily, the echo of his earlier embarrassment still thick in the air. You're missing the broader point, Congresswoman, he snapped, trying to recapture control. This isn't about one footnote. It's about whether you're qualified to weigh in on national intelligence matters with stakes this high. The words came out harsher than intended, tinged with desperation. A few heads in the audience turned toward each other. Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She tilted her head, giving Patel a long, piercing look, then slowly leaned into her microphone with surgical calm. Oh, now it's about my qualifications? Not your failure to cite updated protocol or your misrepresentation of a report you thought I wouldn't understand? She let that hang in the air. Let's be clear. When your trap failed, you changed the subject. The crowd murmured again, louder now. The shift in energy was palpable. Patel raised a finger as if to interrupt, but Jasmine pressed forward. No, Mr. Patel. You came in here armed with arrogance, not facts. You tried to use complexity to confuse and humiliate. But let me remind you, and everyone watching, this hearing isn't a quiz show. It's about truth, accountability, national security. She paused and turned to face the rest of the room. You all saw it. He brought in a report none of us had seen, cherry-picked a technical anomaly that no longer applies, and when exposed, he deflected. Patel tried to interject again. But Jasmine's voice grew stronger, cutting through. Let's talk about the real issue, because your evasion tells me everything. You're not here to serve the truth. You're here to control the narrative. A thunderous silence fell. Even committee chair Representative Brennan leaned back in his seat, arms crossed, watching Patel now with a new lens. Patel's face was taut, the mask cracking. He tried to laugh, a forced chuckle. You think a footnote makes you a hero? Jasmine raised an eyebrow. No, but your attempt to bury me with bad information just made me one. The room shook with applause. Not polite anymore. It was affirming, furious, proud. Reporters feverishly tapped on keyboards. On X, formerly Twitter, clips were already circulating with trending hashtags. Jasmine Crockett clapback, Jaka Cash Corner, Jaka Footnote Gate, Unshakable Jasmine, and then came the most devastating blow. Not from Jasmine's mouth, but from Patel's own. Think we're losing focus here, he muttered, trying to redirect. The public doesn't care about procedural audits. They want action. It was subtle, but it was the first real tell that he'd lost control. Jasmine pounced. Oh, now procedural accuracy doesn't matter? Weren't you just grilling me with data 2 minutes ago? You don't get to rewrite the rules just because they stopped. Working in your favor. A chuckle escaped from someone in the back row. She turned again to the audience. Every American watching this deserves a representative who shows up prepared, who speaks truthfully, who defends democracy with more than half-baked traps and recycled talking points. She leaned forward slightly, her voice softening with purpose. I didn't come here to win a debate. I came here to fight for people who've been silenced by broken systems. People you pretend to defend while feeding them disinformation. Her eyes locked on Patel. You don't scare me, because I've faced worse in silence. But today, I get to speak back. The room exploded. Standing ovation. Some clapped. Others stood still, stunned, unsure if they were witnessing a hearing or a reckoning. Cameras zoomed in on Patel, jaw clenched, lips thin, blinking rapidly. He tried one last pivot. "You're grandstanding." But this time, even that didn't land. Jasmine smiled. Genuinely. "No, I'm standing. And the ground's finally shaking under you." And as the echoes of her words pulsed through the room like aftershocks. But the final moment of truth was still to come. Kash Patel stood stiffly now, flushed and visibly rattled. His earlier swagger had evaporated, replaced by a frantic need to save face. Any face. He forced a half smile as he leaned into the mic. "You know what this is really about?" he said, his voice sharp with faux amusement. "It's about performance. You've got style, Crockett. You talk like a star, but this isn't a courtroom drama or some viral clip. You're playing to the cameras." Laughter, his laughter, escaped, in a brittle staccato. "Go ahead, spin your story. You'll get your applause, your headlines, your 15 minutes. But this hearing, it's meaningless. Nothing changes." He turned slightly, gesturing toward the press. "They'll forget this by next week. Your little footnote rant? It's political theater. And you're just another actor in the circus." For a moment, it seemed the air left the room. Everyone waited, tight-chested, jaws clenched. Then Jasmine Crockett slowly rose from her chair. Not in a hurry, not flustered. She picked up a small binder in front of her, flipped it open calmly, and slid out a single document. "I was hoping," she said quietly, "you'd say that." She held up the page, a sealed, verified internal audit memo from the Intelligence Community Inspector General, signed and time-stamped 2 weeks prior. "The only reason I knew that footnote was outdated," she began, voice rising steadily, "is because I've been working off the record with several intel analysts who risked their careers to bring this to me." A hush fell. Chairs creaked as people leaned in. "This document confirms that the very line you used to trap me, it was flagged for removal, due to being based on faulty metadata, before you ever walked into this hearing." Patel's face froze, Jasmine continued, calm and lethal. "And here's the twist you didn't see coming, Mr. Patel. One of those analysts was your former colleague." She tapped the document gently. "Turns out the people you climbed over to reach this chair, they're the ones lifting me up right now." Gasps, audible ones. A cameraman dropped something in the background. Patel opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Jasmine leaned forward, locking eyes. "So let's talk about theater." She walked around the desk now, binder still in hand, approaching the central podium where Patel sat. "You think my words are an act? My voice, a script? You mock the cameras and say this is all for show. Because deep down, you know this moment matters. You know people are finally watching. And they're not watching you." The screen in the hearing room flickered. Someone in the back had pulled up real-time social media feeds. Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, millions of views. Hashtags trending globally. Cheer truth. Hits hard. Jasmine exposes. Kash. Mic drop moment. Real rep Crockett, Jasmine. Held the binder up for all to see. "This is not a show. This is accountability. You can dismiss the hearing, insult the audience, even try to laugh me off this stage. But the facts are here. The eyes of the country are here." She turned fully to face the public gallery. "And to every young black girl who's ever been told to tone it down, to every son who watched his mother silenced in boardrooms, to every whistleblower who handed me truth in silence, this victory belongs to you." The room erupted. This wasn't applause. It was a roar. Every corner of the chamber pulsed with emotion. Cheers, claps, shouts, fists in the air. Even a few senior committee members stood and nodded slowly. Cameras captured Patel sitting frozen, eyes fixed downward, hands trembling on the table. Jasmine walked back to her seat, slow and proud. She didn't look at him again. She didn't have to. As she sat down, the roar still ringing, someone in the public gallery stood. An older man. Strong, posture, quiet strength. Her father. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He simply placed a hand on his chest and nodded to his daughter, his face full of the kind of pride no words could hold. And then, he saluted. A powerful, slow military salute. The crowd fell silent. Even Patel looked up, stunned by the gesture. Reporters typed furiously. Tears welled up in the eyes of strangers. A beat later, the entire back row stood with Jasmine's father. Then another. Then another. A full standing ovation. Patel sat slumped, utterly eclipsed, defeated not by policy points, but by truth and legacy. And that's when the real shock came next. Kash Patel didn't wait for the cameras to cut. He gathered his papers in silence, fumbling, rushed, a shell of the man who had strutted into the hearing with smug confidence. He didn't make eye contact, didn't ask to respond, didn't even look back at Jasmine Crockett. As he stepped out of the spotlight, flanked by stunned aides and disoriented colleagues, one reporter caught him by the shoulder and asked, "Mr. Patel, any comment?" He muttered a single word under his breath. Outplayed. The room remained in reverent quiet as Chairwoman Gonzalez tapped her gavel once and recessed the hearing. But no one moved. All eyes remained on Jasmine Crockett. She stood once more, not to gloat, not to bask in applause, but because something bigger had to be said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "What we witnessed today wasn't just a political showdown," she began, her eyes scanning the crowd, the press, the cameras, and the faces of young students in the balcony. It was a reminder of what happens when we weaponize doubt and distort truth just to win arguments. She glanced at the empty seat where Patel had been. Arrogance never wins for long. Manipulation runs out of road. And when the stakes are our Constitution, our communities, and our conscience, we don't have the luxury to stay silent. Jasmine closed the binder gently and placed her hands on the desk in front of her. "Today, I was mocked for my education, for my tone, for daring to speak truth with fire. But I didn't show up for validation. I showed up for justice. And I'll keep showing up." A beat passed. Then her voice dropped slightly. Quieter. Heavier. "My father served this country without ever demanding the spotlight. He stood today, not to defend me, but to remind this nation that character still matters, that dignity is louder than any insult, and that truth doesn't need to yell, it just needs to stand firm." She turned to the cameras now, addressing the millions watching online. To the ones who feel unseen, who've been told to be less, speak softer, stand smaller, don't. The world may try to shrink your voice, but when you speak with purpose, you don't just echo, you shift the room. A tear rolled down a woman's cheek in the audience. One of the interns backstage silently mouthed the words, "Thank you." Jasmine gave a small nod, and with it, the speech ended. Not with applause, but with a deeper kind of silence. The kind that follows truth. The kind that lingers. As she stepped away from the podium, her father moved to meet her. They embraced. Tight, long, proud. Two generations connected by purpose. In the background, the media swarm reignited. Social media exploded. Crockett didn't win the debate. She rewrote the rules. Jasmine Crockett is not just a representative. She's a movement. Kash Patel got smoked, but Jasmine, she just made history. Stand with Crockett, or legacy, and truth. Justice served. Final on-screen text. In the end, intelligence, merit, and truth always rise above arrogance and manipulation. Do you think justice was served? Let us know in the comments. Was Jasmine Crockett's response the mic drop moment of the decade? If you believe in standing up for truth, integrity, and legacy, share this video. Let's flood every platform with voices that refuse to be silenced. Subscribe for more debates that matter. And remember, truth doesn't whisper. It roars. Fade out. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Justice served. Truth over noise. Crockett vs. Patel.